Today, we're going to take a look at a relatively recent acquisition of mine, my Grail watch actually. I got my hands on the Zenith El Primero Open Heart. When I say Grail watch, I don't mean the last watch I'll ever buy. I guess it means the best watch I'll ever buy. I mean, unless I win the lottery, I'm never going to get out of the sub $10,000 watch collecting group, as it were. As you all know, I don't like the term entry-level luxury. I would prefer the term basic luxury. Actually, in the case of these pieces, I would call these mainstream luxury, because if you're dropping $3,000 to $5,000 on a watch, they're luxury watches. And frankly, it's an insult to call a Speedmaster an entry-level luxury watch, to call a Jaeger-LeCoultre Polaris an entry-level luxury watch. Those are, I mean, like I said, entry-level is a stupid comment. Basic luxury, mainstream luxury, high-end luxury, ultra-luxury. But, yeah, say basic, don't say entry-level, because that implies that the person has to move up from there. It's like I did a whole video on that, level treadmill crap about just trying to upsell people constantly. People buy the watches they like. You should buy the watches you like. And I really like this watch. In fact, I think that the Zenith El Primero represents a lot of why people collect watches. It has historical connotations. It has horological connotations. It even has aviation roots. Yeah, fantastic piece. It's beautiful. It's gorgeous. It's elegant. It's a high beat movement. It's a great watch. I mean, I've got other nice pieces, but in my opinion, this is the top of the bunch. And the only watch I have in the stable that I'd say would compare with this in a horological sense would be my JLC and my Omega Globemaster annual calendar, because that's also a relatively high-end complication. So let's turn the camera around and take a close look at this watch. Here's the El Primero Open Heart chronograph up close. As you all probably know, El Primero is called the El Primero because it was one of the first automatic chronograph movements produced. Arguably, it was tied with Seiko Pogue, because the Seiko Pogue is also an integrated chronograph, and the Zenith El Primero is an integrated chronograph. The Tag Heuer / Buren / a bunch of other people, Dubois de Pras, in the Monaco is a modular movement. So arguably, even though it beat the El Primero to the market by a few months, it's not in the same ballpark, because integrated movement over a modular movement is a pretty straightforward day and night description. It's interesting that the same people who defend the Monaco as the first chronograph would turn their nose up at any other watch with a modular movement in it. So before I talk a little bit more about the fantastic history of Zenith, because Zenith is horologically significant, aeronautically significant. So it's not a space watch, but it has a heavy aeronautical history. And it has a phenomenal business story that's closely tied into its horological story. But before we go into the actual story of Zenith as a company, let's take a closer look at this specific watch. This is the Zenith El Primero Open Heart. And the beautiful thing about this piece is, for all of the aspects of timing of when it came to the market and all, it is still a superlative watch, a phenomenal chronograph, because this is not only a column wheel chronograph with an in-house movement from before that was important, it's also a high beat watch. So this watch beats at 10 hertz, 5 hertz, I'm sorry, 10 times a second, 5 hertz, because a hertz is a cycle, so a cycle's back and forth, so 5 hertz translates to 10 beats a second. And you can see the balance wheel wailing away in there at that comically high speed. And you can see the entire balance. That's one of the beautiful things about an open heart. In the case of the Zenith El Primero open heart, their open heart version is actually has quite a legacy. It's been around for quite a while, and to me was a very logical extension for the El Primero, especially in this dressier aspect, because once you accept that you can wear a chronograph as a dress watch, why not wear a nice chronograph as a dress watch as opposed to trying to updress a sports chronograph? This is a beautiful dress chronograph. The open heart adds an elegance to it, and it's just a phenomenal presentation. Zenith is famous for the overlapping subdials, for the totalizers, for the hours and minutes on the chrono. And if you look here, you'll see that there is a flying seconds. It's a 3-lobed flying seconds hand because, if you actually did want to try to use it for timing, then you can have it run along that arc where the second hand is actually visible. Now, there's another point about this movement that I would like to make, is if you notice the pallet, fork, and see if we can get in a little closer before we lose our focus. If you look very closely at the pallet fork and the escape wheel, you'll notice they've got like a little bit of a colorful tinge to it, like a bluish, purplish tinge to them. And that's because the pallet fork and the escape wheel are made of silicon. Now, there are some who would say that this is the same as having a quartz watch, but I think they're idiots. Or I think that they're getting, I won't call them idiots, that's a little bit of a strong, I would say that they're sadly misinformed, because using silicon as a material is completely different than using silicon as an electronic device. As you see here, that's a pallet fork, and that's an escape wheel wailing away in there at 5 hertz. And one of the reasons that they can get away with it in the newer ones with such long maintenance intervals is because silicon does not require the lubrication that steel does. Essentially, we're talking about, these are pieces of glass, engineered glass in here. And it's what angers me when people toss scientific advances into the same pot. Some think that just because the pallet fork is now made of silicon, that the watch has lost some of its character. And I'm like, what's the difference between a silicon pallet fork and a hairspring that's made out of so many exotic materials that they have to give it a fancy name that sounds metallic so that people don't get turned off by it? I think that these silicon components in mechanical watches represent some of the hypocrisy at the higher end of the marketplace, because this is a valid mechanical technology. It is not electronic technology. It is using advanced machining technologies, microelectromechanical systems, acid etch, wafer fab type stuff to make physical parts, okay? And if anybody wants to talk about this at length, I'd be more than happy to. I've gone into this conversation before on my entire video on the subject of silicon parts in mechanical watches. But frankly, in my humble opinion, the Zenith El Primero is the epitome of horological significance and beauty because, as I said, not only was it the first high-beat integrated chronograph movement ever introduced in the industry, it, as I said, has also an aviation history. Blériot, the famous, I believe it was Louis Blériot, the famous aviator, wore it. And in fact, the first flight across the English Channel, the name of the pilot escapes and it could have been Blériot as well. wore a Zenith. Zenith was actually worn by quite a few adventurers back in the day. It was one of the first advanced watch manufacturers in existence, in fact. And Zenith's biggest problem is that it lived under the shadow of its American namesake. They weren't named for each other, just bad marketing timing, I would say, because the Zenith Radio Company made television sets. But because they owned the copyright in the United States, the trademark, Zenith couldn't really sell in the United States, and so was deprived of its biggest market. And then, of course, I don't know, I shouldn't say of course, and then the development of this El Primero movement. Let's flip over and take a look at the back while I talk some more about the history. Isn't that a beautiful, beautiful piece? What a lovely, lovely watch. And as I said, column wheel chronograph, high beat mechanism, very, very well finished. And so the American Zenith television company obviously kept them from selling Zenith watches inside the United States. And then the company went bankrupt creating the El Primero movement. Zenith literally went bankrupt making this movement, designing it, because it takes a lot of money to create a movement. And so when Zenith did go out of business, they were bought up by the American Zenith Company, who then told them, you know, that movement that you went bankrupt developing and announced as a phenomenal mechanical breakthrough, we want you to just trash all that stuff, throw it away, sell it off. We don't care. We want you to make quartz watches and crap. Yeah, crap. We said that, crap. We want you to make crap. In fact, I'm going to put it on the letterhead. Zenith watches will now make crap. But luckily, a gentleman named Charles Vermeau said, screw that. He was a senior engineer at Zenith, and he worked at Martel before Zenith bought Martel. And Charles Vermeau said, you know, screw that shit. I am not going to do that. And because of him, this watch exists today, because he took the equipment, the tooling, the parts, and hid them all. I shouldn't say hid them. He just secured them in an attic storage space in the factory, and kept them there for decades until the American Zenith Company went out of business, and the original watch company was able to buy themselves back, as it were. And Vermeau opened up the attic and said, "Look," and the rest is history. Zenith went on from that point to sell their movements to Abel, and of course, famously in the first Rolex Daytona, which is another reason anybody who's a Rolex fanboy who says anything about Zenith either is just too Rolex fanboy for their own good, or doesn't understand enough about horological history. But this watch has so much history, so much legacy, so much horology in it. And it's a gorgeous, gorgeous watch. So let's take a couple of measurements and throw it on the wrist to see what it looks like. There we go. We're looking at a 42. Oops, yeah, 42. My hand's not as steady as it should be, but yeah, there we go. It's a 42 by 13 and change. So it's relatively slim. It's not as slim as a Daytona, but then again, Rolex has been really, really trying to make their movements very, very thin, and that's their big claim to fame. And actually, to do the open heart and to display back and all of the decoration, I would take this over a Daytona any day of the week and twice on Sundays. The Daytona is a very valuable and well-made watch. I'm not going to take anything away from the Daytona, but to say that the Daytona is a very good watch, and then to look at this, there's no comparison. This is such a better watch in just about every aspect, except maybe water resistance. But the Daytona is a racing watch. The fact that it has screw-down pushers doesn't make any sense to me anyway. But again, beautiful piece, crocodile or alligator, exotic lizard strap. The deployment is awesomely phenomenal. It's a really nice deployment. It's not as nice as the deployment in my Mont Blanc Geosphere, because the Mont Blanc's got a micro adjustment in it, but this is a beautiful piece, and it's got both a tang pin and a little secure bump here, so it actually locks into the strap in two places. I've been wearing this, and you can see it keeps a lot of the stress off of the strap, so you don't get a lot of that whole distension that you get with some other straps with buckle and tang, even though this is a deployant. Now, let's, in fact, put this on. So you see what I mean about the clip. Let's see, I believe I have it in the third hole. Yeah, boom. So you put this part in first, boom. Oops, no, you don't put this part in first. You put this part in first. Tang, let's see, there we go. And then this fits into the hole here. So you have the buckle tang, and then you've got the additional hole, and it really does keep that secure. So wristwatch check. I'm wearing my Breitling Navitimer GMT on a aftermarket Milanese. As I've said in my other videos, Milanese is my go-to metal strap when the watch I bought came with a leather strap. This came with the leather, and I didn't feel like dropping $1,000 plus on a Breitling metal bracelet, so I got this really nice Milanese, and Milanese is very in. It's on the new Seamaster. It's used in a lot of watches, Breitling as well. So throwing an aftermarket Milanese on a piece does give it a nice look. So let's throw this on the wrist. Very clean. It fits and sits very well. I've got an 18 and change centimeter wrist, and it's about 65 millimeters top to bottom. But that reminds me, the lug width, the length lug to lug on this is about 46 and change, 47. So on my 18 and change wrist, it looks gorgeous. It sits well. The lugs are relatively long, but they do slope down nicely. And with a leather strap, it comes straight down from the lugs onto the wrist. So it sits very well in leather. I'd be curious to see what it would look like on a factory metal strap. A Milanese strap is flexible enough it would come across like the leather. But in general, just a beautiful, beautiful piece. Now, I've told people, and I've said this on my show, that this was my grail piece. This is my grail piece. It represents almost everything watch collecting means to me. Horologically significant, historically significant, beautiful, functional, elegant. I have other beautiful pieces. But to me, this is pretty much the epitome of horology and watchmaking. There are more expensive watches out there, but there are very few better watches out there. I mean, you might find something with a little bit more fit and finish, something from one of the higher horological houses. But if you're just talking about a really beautiful, dressy, elegant, beautiful chronograph to wear and use, you can't go much wrong from this one. And Grail watch doesn't mean, at least to me, that you stop buying. Grail watch means that it's the top of your collection at the time that you perceive it. I mean, I may eventually win the lottery or something and get to debate whether or not a Patek is worth it or an Audemars is worth it. But in my humble opinion, a real world watch collector is playing in the under $10,000 space. And for less than $10,000, I don't think you'd find a better chronograph than the Zenith El Primero, with or without an open heart. So that was the episode. I really do like this piece. And if you have any questions, please leave comments below and please subscribe. So let's turn the camera around and close out the episode. So that was the Zenith El Primero Open Heart. Beautiful, gorgeous, horological, historical, and a nice piece. Thanks for taking the time to watch, and please subscribe. It really does help. Have a great day.